Okay, so this is the dashboard of a sample company that I set up just for purposes of this course here. And this first section here, what we're going to do is we're just going to go through an overview of QuickBooks and kind of show you where things are at. After we're done with that, we'll get into actually setting up the QuickBooks in such a way that you can use it for your rental property. And then from there, we're going to start doing some transactions and just showing you step by step the things that you need to do and how it works within the system. So this is the dashboard. And of course, there are a lot of different options on here. Over here to the left, you see a series of different sections, and then a new button, and then series up here along this menu bar as well. So the first thing I want to look at is the new button. This is where I go for a lot of the things that I do within QuickBooks. And so whenever I want to create a new invoice or receive a payment, estimate, credit memo, I will go through and select one of these here. If actions are related to expenses and vendors are going to be in the second column. Don't mess much with the employees because I don't have any employees that I process payroll for. And then some other things like doing a bank deposit, making a transfer, journal entry, statements, so a couple things to do with the inventory, which I really don't mess with, and then a couple sales pitches here, like apply for capital is just them trying to say into one of their financing deals or agreements. But this plus is a very quick and easy way to find actions that you want to complete within the software. And then mine may look just a hair different because I have an accountant's version here. The sample client is this database, and I can select between my different clients from here. So you may not see this particular button here, and same with the accountant tools. But you will have the search function, which is very nice. I mean, you can do a lot of different things here. You can look for amounts. You can, it'll tell you if you start in, it'll tell you everything in here. It's pretty powerful. So if you're ever looking for like an invoice number here, it'll pop that. You can put the number in, you can put the vendor name in, and all that stuff will pop up. So search function is very powerful on here. You have an alert. So if there's any messages coming through or notifications, this will have like a red dot. So that means you have a message. And then over here is the gear icon. Again, is another kind of quick go-to place, like with the new button over here. But this is going to be more for getting to the back end of things. So your settings, to customize your styles and forms, your chart of accounts, any of your lists that you're working through, any recurring transactions. And then these tools, some of these may not be here on what you're looking at, but to reconcile and import data and things along those lines. Okay, let's start up here with the overview. So this overview section, the overview tab, is just basic information about your company. So what we had over here is kind of the subscription you're on, if you're on payroll, if your sales tax is enabled, how many applications you have set up to your company. The next section, of banking activity, is just a list of your bank accounts and just a quick snapshot of what's going on with them. So if you had anything set up here, it'd tell you what your bank balance is. If you had let me back up there. If and when you have your accounts linked to your bank, it'll show what your bank balance shows, and this is the balance it shows in that same account in QuickBooks. So if there's a variance, then you're missing some transactions. The unaccepted are basically going to be any transactions that are downloaded from your bank account but haven't been accepted into QuickBooks yet. And then unreconciled are any transactions that you haven't reconciled. And once you start reconciling your bank accounts, it'll show you the last reconciliation date for each one of these accounts to the right. And the common issues section, basically it's just flagging for things you may want to look at here. So if there's anything sitting undeposited funds, uncategorized assets, income, any of these things could be red flags, and really you kind of want to keep these clear. So as you see here, I have AR aging because of the sample information I put up. And I think I put rents that were due in January. So it's showing that there's 4 transactions that are way past 90 days. And then same with the accounts payable, there's 3 there. So that may be a red flag that if you know that somebody, you have rent out there that's more than 90 days old, you can click into it right here and it'll take you to that section. You can start working on it. Transaction volume is really just kind of an overview of how many transactions you have in kind of each of these categories. Not a super useful tool for most people, but it helps. It helps your accountant for sure kind of determine how much volume you're working with when they're trying to give you a quote. But it's just overall how many transactions, how many invoices how many invoice payments do you receive, bank deposits do you do in any given time period. Now, our month-end review, this is a fairly new feature that QuickBooks has worked on, and it's actually pretty cool. I don't have this one set up, but what it basically does is allows you to work up your kind of like your month-end review process, your workflow. And for bookkeepers and accountants, this is great. And if you're going to be doing your own bookkeeping, this would be a great place to kind of set up your workflow as well. So it starts out with in the tabs. You start to review your transactions, and once everything's clear there, you go to your reconciliations and clear that up, and then once it's done, you do a final review, which will signal the end of your month-end process for your properties. So this first section here is transaction review. If there's any open issues, they may pop up here, but this is more of a reminder to resolve your open issues and collect any supporting information. So if there's any open bank transactions, again, you just basically want to make sure that all your transactions are accounted for, your links to your bank accounts are all set up, and your transactions are up to date. Again, if I had any open issues that QuickBooks flagged as an issue, it would pop here, like uncategorized transactions or transactions without payees. Those would be problems. So it would list them here. You can click into them, figure out what's wrong with it, and correct it. And any additional items, this is the area where you can really customize it. They have a few things put in here, like, check for personal transactions, which hopefully we're not dealing with that because we don't want to commingle. Review loan payments. So if you have loan payments that are recurring monthly, you can check on this, make sure they're paid, make sure that they're accounted for. Record cash transactions, like if you're working with a petty cash, or if you have some receipts out that haven't been put in. And then you can set up custom items. So if there's things that you need to remind yourself to do every single month, and what you do is you just hit this add button, and this last one's an example of a custom item, but it says make sure that all rent is charged to the tenant ledger, and you can set up reminders and statuses of that. But this is a good way. So month end, you come through and you have a list of your things that you want to make sure that you check off before you move on with the month end process. From there, we jump over to the account reconciliation. And again, it just kind of goes to the bank accounts, and it'll tell you the last reconciliation date and how many transactions are unreconciled. So again, it's a reminder to make sure that all your accounts are reconciled on a monthly basis. And then you have the additional items section here as well, which you can add in your own customization. So you can put in here, if you have a credit card, you could put your, reconcile Visa account. Or if you are doing, some people will take the extra step and split their mortgage payment into principal and interest. So you can have that as a reminder to reconcile that, whatever you need to reconcile, this would be the area to put those in and customize it. And then once we're done with this area, we go to the final review. And here is going to be where you can set up a list of the reports that you are going to want to do. So the month-end process should consist of you going through your profit and loss, or income statement is what it's called in regular terms. I'm not sure why QuickBooks calls it profit and loss, but it's an income statement. Your balance sheet, and then typically you also have an aged payable and an aged receivables report, so you can add those here. And you would go through each report, you would review the information on there, you click into the line items and make sure that everything is up to date and everything looks normal. The one thing that QuickBooks doesn't really offer here is a rent roll, which would be a standard report within a property management software. But a rent roll itself is a pretty static report. It doesn't change much, so it's not that big of a deal in my opinion. Now on to the dashboard. So the dashboard is just going to be a series of cards that give you a quick overview of everything that's happening in the business. You can mess around with this a little bit and customize a little bit, but for the most part, what you see here is the information that you're going to find useful anyway. So any of your invoices that are out there, these would be, in your case, rent invoices, any expenses over the last 30 days, and your bank accounts, what their current balances are. And then just a real quick snapshot of your profit and loss for the current month or whatever month that you select. And in sales, sales in our case is going to be rent income. This probably will not be a very useful card for property management, but perhaps you can find a creative way to use it. Okay, so the banking section here, and again, I switched company files here so that you can see these screens with some more activity in. But this is where first off you would come to set up your link to your bank account, and it's a really simple process. You just go through and you click set up your bank. It'll ask you what bank you use, and you can find your bank within their list or put in their website and they'll connect to it. And then once you link up to your account, you'll put your username and password in, and it'll form a connection. So under this tab, what this does is it shows all of your accounts that you're linked with, and then it'll show when you hit the update, or it can automatically update as well. Here's your update button. It's going to download any of the transactions that have hit since the last time you updated your account. Then you can go through and you can make sure that they are categorized correctly, that the amount's right, that you know what it is, and hit add, and that'll add it to your QuickBooks file. So this is an easy way to get transactions into your software, and it's also why I like using an operating account and a credit card too, because you can link to the account instead of doing all that data entry. It does it all for you. This next tab here, the Rules tab here, are rules that can be set up for a variety of different things. For me, the way I use them most of the time is when there is an expense that comes in, and it's always going to be classified to a certain chart of accounts, which again we'll talk about here in a little bit. I set up a rule to where every time it comes in, it knows to classify it at this account number, this ledger number, so it knows what type of expense it is. Now you can also set this to automatically post, but I like to just have it show that there's a rule applied, as you can see here, just so I can verify that it's being applied correctly. Then the Receipts tab. This is nice because there are a series of ways that you can get your receipts in. So if you, let's just say, go to Home Depot and you purchase something, one of the things you can do is, if you have a copy of that receipt, you can drag it right here or upload it from your computer. If you use the app on your iPhone or Android, whatever smartphone you use, it's nice because you can take a photo and it'll just upload it here, and then it will show up in your For Review section. You can also just email it to a certain address. You would have to set up the proper email address first, but if you just emailed it to that address, it'd also show up in this list here. And then what happens is you come in, and this is for the For Review, and you come in and you go through, and this matches some other expenses already. So you can just click match, and it link your receipt to the expense that was downloaded from your bank account or whatever you entered. Now, if it's not in your account, then it'll have let's check to see if this other receipt. It looks like there's a record found. If it's not in your system, it'll give you the opportunity to fill in information, the date, the vendor, the account number it belongs to, and so forth. But once you match it or accept it, then this gets linked to that transaction, and it is in your software from that point forward. Now, the OCR software capabilities are not in all the property management softwares. They are becoming standard in a lot of them, but they're not in all of them yet. But this is a very, very nice feature to have. Okay, your expenses section. So first off, under this expense tab here, this is going to be a list of all your expenses, whether, there are bills that you put in, whether it's checks that you went out, whether it's receipts, cash receipts. It's just a list of everything. So you can go through here and you can filter and you can search if you're looking for some specific. You can also come up here to the search and look that way, and it'll pull these up as well. And there's also some batch functions here that if you know that these 20 expenses, for example, belong in maintenance and repairs, you can select these 10 and batch action and categorize them all the same. So there's some batch actions, or you can print them all. Again, here you can print checks from this area. Also order checks directly from them. You can create a new expense transaction, whether it be a credit card or a cash transaction. You can enter a bill. So there's a series of ways to do your transactions from this screen. And this next tab is about your vendors. This is going to be a list of all the vendors you have set up in your system, and it's going to be also where you go in and create new vendors as well. So you can come over here and click the new vendor button, or if you have a list and it's set up in the Excel or CSV sheet correctly, you can import your vendors from another software. And then you would also do your 1099 preparation from here. So order checks, pay bills. This is at the end of the year when you get ready to send out your 1099s to any vendors that you paid out. And basically anybody that you paid over $600 in a year, unless they're a corporation, needs to have a 1099 sent to them. So that's where you would take care of that function. Okay, now on the sales side, we start out with an overview tab here, and again, it's just showing some of the same information that's been on some of the other screens. How your information, there's a setup kind of wizard here, and then what's the status of any deposits that are out there. Because just because you enter a deposit or payment out there, especially if it's one of the automatic downloaded ones, it doesn't always mean that it's in. It could be in some sort of transactional period. So this kind of gives you it's more of a red flag type card for you. Looks like there's some shortcuts down here. I never use these, but it's just another way to get to the places, do the function you want to complete. Again, I always go through the plus new button. A lot easier for me, at least. Okay, the all sales. This is going to be, I think for the most part, the only thing you should see here are rental invoices. That would be what would be considered a sale because we're going to set up our rent payments as invoices. So this would be where you would go to filter and find potential invoices. You can look by the transaction type, the status, date range, any of the customers that you have, but it's just a filter and find type deal. And then, of course, you have the same batch actions potential here. This is a nice kind of like menu bar, because what it does is if there are any issues here that you want to look at, so you see unpaid invoices in the last 365 days, you can click this and it'll filter that out for you. Let's see here. We also have a couple buttons over here, the import transactions. So if you're set up with Square, you can import all of those merchant account transactions right from Square. And then the new transactions button, you can create your invoice, a payment, estimates, anything from this new transactions. But again, you can also create it from here. Your invoices, again, are going to be specifically your invoices. The all sales could include other types of sales transactions. The invoices are going to be specifically invoices, so it's going to be the same thing. You can do all your search functions here, and it gives you some information about the status of some of that you can click into as well. And you can create a new invoice by clicking new invoice, or you can import invoices, but I've never imported invoices, never found a need. Now, your customers section is going to be a list of all of your customers. So in this case, it's going to be the way that we're going to set this up. What you would see is a list of all your properties and a list of all the tenants as well. So because customers, the way that we have to set this up to make it work is that we set the property up as a customer and a tenant as a customer, which we'll get into in the setup realm. It's not that big of a deal, but you'll see all of that here. There's also, of course, the batch actions like everything else. There's also the filter bar here for quick looks at things. You can set up customer types if you want. I really don't use these, but one way you could do this is if you owned commercial and residential real estate. One customer type could be it could be commercial and the other one could be residential. So you can separate them that way. And then the only thing that allows you to do is allows you to pull reports and filter it out by those customer types. And then if you want to create a new customer, so enter a new property, enter a new customer or a new tenant, you'd come here and then you can import them as well. But again, I've never really used that function. All right, deposits. So this is really going to be a list of your deposits, and where this is going to be useful is if you are accepting online payments. What happens is just because you get an online payment doesn't mean it's automatically in your account. What it will do is it will batch all the payments from a day in a deposit. So if you get 3 rent payments in a day, it's not going to show up as 500, 500, and 500. It's going to be one deposit of 1,500, which includes 3 payments of 500 in a list amount. So this is where you'd go to get that deposit breakdown and see perhaps where the status is of it. And then products and services, this is where we're going to go. And when we get back to the dummy sample file, you're going to see how this is used more. But what this is going to be is where you're going to set up your items that you're going to put on your invoices. So your rent, damages, security deposit, those types of things. But we'll get into more detail here in that in a little bit. Now your payroll tab, again, we're not going to really delve into this a whole bunch because for most of you, we're not going to be dealing with employees or processing employee payroll. If you do have employees, QuickBooks is a very quick and easy way to process payroll. I have used it before. It's not bad at all. Pretty reasonable too. So feel free to check into that if you have employees that want to use it. The time, again, this is going to be if you are keeping track of your time, and this could be for time for anything. It could be for employees, it could be for projects, it could be for jobs. It integrates well with one of their own apps, which is T-Sheets, which you can see here, Launch T-Sheets. So again, for our purposes, we really won't be using this for property management in general. You would probably use it more if you start managing for other people and want to track time, especially on jobs. We used something like this when we were doing turnovers and we wanted to track the time for, the amount of labor hours and who was there and so forth on a job. But for our purposes, it is not much point of doing that. Our report section. This is where we're going to go for all of our reports. Now, there's a series of sections here, and of course up top's favorites, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you have your business overview accounts, which again, this is going to be a lot of financial stuff, profit and losses, balance sheets, audit log, statement of cash flows. It's going to go through your AR type report, so who owes you money, and just different ways to look at, similar information, the AR invoice list, statement list, terms list. And again, those are just items that are related to your AR. Your sales and your customers, which contact list, deposit details, sales by customer detail, by summary, so all sales related. What you owe or your accounts payable type report, so who do you owe, your AP aging, AP summary, things along those lines, unpaid bills. This is kind of a good report, 1099 contractor balance. So this, if you want to know how many vendors you've paid over $600 for the year on our 1099 vendor, this report will give you that information. Then we have expense and vendors, and some of these reports are a little duplicated, but you got your vendor contact list and just a series of vendor-related reports. Employees, again, not really going to be messing with a whole bunch. And then here is a list of common reports that an accountant would typically look at. So, your trial balance, balance sheet, and profit and loss. Again, some of these are duplicated from others. But what I do is I find the reports that I want, and I just select this little star over here to make it green. And what that does is it makes it a favorite. And then we'll get into this more, but you can also format it the way that you want to format it and then save the customization. And then every time you pull it, it's going to pull up in that same way. And then another tab here they have is the Performance Center. Again, it's just going to be more of a dashboard type deal. Let me get through this. Obviously, I don't use it very often, but it's just going to be a dashboard type deal. I tend to look at reports, but if you're a dashboard type of person, you can come in here and take a look at some of this stuff. I mean, there's good information there, of course, but your accounts receivable by aging period, which is basically going to be your past due rent, your expenses year to date over time by the month, revenue by the month. So there's some good snapshots in here. So if you like this kind of stuff, then, by all means, you got your current ratio and your quick ratio time, which for rental properties, you could use them, but I'm not sure how helpful it would really be. Okay, so next is our tax center, and we have two tabs here, your sales tax and your payroll tax. So this is where you would go to set up, if you are required to collect sales tax, you can go up here and set up your sales tax account and link to your organizations to tax you. So this is the address that I have in here. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to try to find the taxing organizations for this company. And just some questions, but it's going to go through and simple as that. It has all of the sales tax information, the agencies I need to report to, and everything right there. So let me see what it looks like after I set it up. But yeah, your filing frequency. So you're going to know this stuff if you need to do this for your company. And it's going to list, and if some agencies will actually link directly to QuickBooks, others will not. So what you can do here is this will show you what you need to pay. It generates off the reports the way you have it set up, but it'll show you what you need to pay. And then if you can select this view return if there's activity in there, and it's going to produce the report that you can use to go into the agency's online system and recreate, or if you happen to mail it directly in, you can do that as well. But then you can record that that's paid here and just kind of keep that all nice and clean. The other area is something similar, but instead of sales tax, it's going to be for your payroll agencies, and I don't have any employees set up in here, so I don't want to go get all that set up at this point in time, because there's probably a couple different agencies that would pop up here. But it's the same premise. You get set up with your companies or set up with the tax agencies, and then you keep up with making sure you pay your taxes. And this can be on your workflow for your month end too, if that happens to be the deal. If you have to file your taxes or file a sales tax return every month, that can be on your workflow that we talked about earlier. Now our trips tab, again, this is going to be if you track mileage. You could track mileage, given that we make trips to the properties and things along those lines. So if you decide to do that, and you can download your trips, you can add a trip, and it'll just keep track as you go. And then of course I would say save that, save your physical log as well. But this whole area is for your mileage tracking, and again, you can write that off in a lot of circumstances. So this may be a good little area for you to check into if you do that. Okay, the accounting tab here, or the accounting section, as we are moving through this, we're almost complete. So two main tabs here. The first one's your chart of accounts. And again, we're going to get into the chart of accounts. This is where you classify your income and expenses and your balance sheet accounts. And this is what is going to produce those financial reports that tell you how your property is performing. So we'll get into the details of this, but this is where you find your chart of accounts. You can come in here and you can edit the information on the chart of accounts. Generally, once this is set up, I really just kind of leave this alone, but that's where you can find your chart of accounts. Again, you can run a report, which is just a list of all these and of your chart of accounts, or you can create a new account here as well and get that all set up, and it'll pop up on your list. And then the reconciliation. This is a place where you can go to reconcile any of your bank accounts. So you can see here I have an operating account, and you just come in here, you got your beginning balance, you put your ending balance, you put your ending date, and you start reconciling. Let me just see if I can start one here just to give you a quick overview. And we'll get into this a little more detail later, but again, pretty straightforward here. And here's your beginning balance, any transactions, and these have all cleared. If there's a difference, then you need to figure out where the difference is, and this should say 0, and you can move on from there. Okay, so that is what I have for the overview of the QuickBooks, your account and your software here. And next what we're going to do is we're going to start getting into the setup component of the QuickBooks and show you how to set this up so you can use it as part of your business for managing the rental properties. So we will see you in the next lesson.